Hey lovelies, I'm Pretty Lanisha and this is my sewing channel. Anything dealing with me making something with my hands is going to be on this channel. So let's get into it. I'm starting off with the shorts. I'm using an old pair of shorts that I love the fit of, and I'm tweaking it a bit so I could get the results that I want, and I'm going for more of a track shorts vibe. So that's what I'm trying to draft out right now. And basically you can't really see the drafting process, but I'm gonna have a see-through panel. It was supposed to be see-through, but the mesh wasn't blending with my skin, so it's just gonna be a mesh panel, and I'm writing that out right now. We're gonna cut 2 pieces for the front and 2 pieces for the back, and then I'm gonna show you how I cut out the mesh panel. So I use my pattern piece to actually cut this out, and in a few I'm going to show you exactly how I do that. As you see, I'm using a piece that I separated from my shorts pattern to cut out my mesh panel. We need seam allowance, so I'm not cutting it exactly because seam allowance is our friend. It allows our shorts to fit exactly the way we want it and not be altered differently because we did not add it. Now, this is what I was talking about. I use the pattern to see where I need to cut that mesh panel out on my shorts, and this is how I line it up so I can use the ruler and get the exact markings that I need to cut that panel out. Now I take it and I use it to cut out my mesh, and I'm leaving space of seam allowance so I know when I sew it together it's going to give me the same size shorts that I originally drafted in my pattern. So boom, everything should be cut out and you should have a total of 10 pieces, 4 front and back pieces, 2 mesh pieces, and 4 front and back bottom pieces. So I'm just showing you how I would set it up to sew it. So we're going to sew this mesh piece to the front top piece, and we're going to do the same for the back and do the same for the bottom. And once you're done, if your material allows you to iron, you're going to iron the seam allowance so that you can't see it through the mesh, and this is the results that you're going to get. And you do the same for the back. So now that you did that for the front and the back, it's time to sew in the inseam. So you're sewing exactly where I show you, and once that's sewn, we're going to sew up the crotch, and once the crotch is sewn, we're going to put right sides facing, the front and the back, right sides facing, and we're going to sew down the sides. And we're going to leave that space open because we're going to hem that now, and we're going to hem all around the short leg, and we're going to do that for this side and the other side. Once that's finished, we on to the waistband. These shorts are easy, quick, simple. So we take out our elastic. We're going to see how much. I wanted like a gathering ruffle effect at the top, kind of like a paper bag effect, so I'm leaving space so I can add another stitch going around the top. As you see, I left an opening so I could drag my elastic through and allow it to come out from the other side, and I just finished up my shorts by sewing that space shut. On to the bralette. I got my bralette pattern from Pinterest. I'll put the link below, and I tweaked the pattern for my needs. So in total you're going to need 10 pieces, so 2 mesh pieces, 4 small cup pieces, which would be the center cup, and 4 outer cup pieces, which is going to be close to the armpit. So I'll go ahead and cut my pieces out on the bias of my fabric, and I'm checking to see if my pieces all match up so I know what pieces go to what. And I'm gonna go ahead and cut out my mesh, and there's no wrong or right side to the mesh, so you pin the mesh down to your fabric and you go ahead and sandwich the other fabric in between, making sure right sides are facing each other. We're gonna go ahead and sew down the side that I'm about to point to. I'm using a straight stitch to sew this together, and I'm going to finish it off with my serger because we don't want any raw edges. Raw edges allow for fraying, and fraying is no bueno. So we're going to use a serger or our zigzag stitch on our sewing machine. Now I went ahead and pulled out my handy dandy iron because I need to iron these seams flat so I'm able to top stitch with no problem. Now here comes the tricky part. I have labeled it 1 and 2 because I want you to know that I'm sewing this together to allow that I could add a cup, a foam cup inside, a push-up cup inside, whatever I want to add inside, I will be able to do that. So what allows me to do that is to pin 1 to 1, which is the center and outer cup together, right sides facing, and 2 to 2, which is the small cup open piece to the outside cup piece that would be closer to the armpit. I hope watching it is better than me trying to explain it because I don't really know how to explain it to you guys, and I'm so upset because the only footage that I got, I filmed it in slow motion, so now it's freaking grainy, but I'm hoping that you guys see exactly what I'm doing. Now if you don't want to add a cup piece, you would literally just be sewing this all the way down. You would have sandwiched the piece that we previously sewn, which would be the center of the cup piece, to the outer cup piece, which would be closer to the armpit, together straight down. You would have just kept sewing straight down, but because I want to add something, that's not how I did it. Now I'm going ahead and cutting out strips on the bias so I can make bias tape. So we're going to go ahead and cut it out on a bias because again, the bias of a fabric allows it to have minimum stretch, and that's what we need for our bias tape. We want it to have a little bit of stretch to go over whatever we're trying to conceal, and that is the edge of our mesh right now. I'm going to go ahead and sew a little bit of my bias tape and then sandwich my mesh piece right in between and sew straight down with a straight stitch. I'm going to do the same for the other side of the cup, and this is how I'm finishing my cups. I will be accessorizing my straps and my bralette with a O-ring heart clasp closure, and I need an opening for it to hook onto, and just do the same for the other cup. So the cups are done and we're moving on to the body. I guess it's called the body, but yeah, moving on to the body. The body is having a mesh panel as well, so I'm going ahead and cut that piece out for the mesh panel, and you should have those 2 mesh pieces and 2 bottom and 2 top pieces, so 8 pieces in total. There we go. So we're going to do the same concept. We're going to sandwich these pieces in between each other, as you see, and we're going to sew it with a straight stitch. So make sure you place your cups in the middle and how you would like them to fit on your bust area. Go ahead and pin them in between the 2 body pieces and sew it with a straight stitch. And you're going to do the same for the mesh panel as well. So now that has been sewn and serged, and I'm doing it this way because we don't want 2 mesh pieces. We want the mesh piece to be as see-through as possible, and allowing 2 mesh pieces kind of make it more opaque and harder to see through. So doing it this way just allows for you to have 1 panel of mesh and still have your bralette lined and look professional and neat. So now I'm basically pinning it together because I want to top stitch, and pinning it together just makes that easier. I'm going to go ahead and top stitch the piece with the mesh as well. And then I'm going to finish the edges with my serger. If you don't have a serger, you can finish the edges with a zigzag stitch, but we want to finish our edges because what we do not want any type of fraying. Everything is serged and sewn together, and again we're pushing the seam allowance to the top and the seam allowance at the bottom to the bottom because we do not want to see it through the mesh. So we're going to top stitch that into place, and that allows it to look nice and neat and you don't see it through the mesh. We're going to move on to making more bias tape because that's what we're going to use to hem or finish off the bottom of our bralette. Okay, yes, we're finally reaching to the end. So I'm cutting out 4 rectangular pieces because this is what we're going to use to hem off the back portion or close off the back portion. And I cut out a whole bunch of pieces in different sizes. We're going to allow for straps for me to close up my top so I can put it on and off. And I'm going to sandwich 3 of the smaller straps in between these 2 rectangular pieces, and I'm gonna sew it together. Just in case you really don't see what I'm doing, I'm folding up the edges on the side just of that portion, and I'm gonna go ahead and sew right there. Once that is sewn, I'm gonna go ahead and top stitch that down so the seam allowance are going to the outside, and I'm gonna then fold the rest of that in and sew that down. Once that is finished, I'm gonna tuck it in, and as you see, it's starting to come together. I'm gonna add my little hoop in there because that's gonna allow me to put my closure clasps in, and I'm gonna sew that up. Closure clasp is done. The rest of the straps are basically what I use for my straps to tie on my shoulders. So there we go. I wanted to tie up. You do not have to do that. You don't have to cut them. You could just leave it, measure your shoulders from the front to the back, and that could be your strap. Your strap does not have to be adjustable like how I did mine. Now you see what I'm talking about. I'm able to add in padding and stuff like that, and now I'm using fray check to close up that hole, and I'm sewing it because what we do not want any raw edges. We don't want no fraying. So I'm gonna go ahead and close that up by wrapping my stitches around the edges of the fabric, and once you do that, you are finished. And I added 2 strips of my bias tape in between my cuffs because I'm flat chested and I don't have too much boobs to like accentuate anything, so I added it as an accessory. But if you have boobs, it's optional. You don't have to do it. Anyways, this is final results. Please check out me and Shay's video, and look out for part 2 where you see the robe and the bonus pants. Links will be below. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, lovelies, later.